Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. Today we have a question from our friend Bruno. Bruno saw a couple of my videos. He really liked the way I answer questions, so he asked me this. Many years ago I practiced judo, and I really liked it, but unfortunately I cannot do any martial arts anymore because I have a back hernia since about 7 years. Now, I really would like to do something, so I was wondering if you could recommend some martial art that can be done even with a hernia. I know it sounds like a silly question, but I so desperately want to practice martial arts that I still would like to ask you this question. Hope you can help me with my search. Kind regards, Bruno. All right, Bruno. Man, it's unfortunate. Life throws a wrench in the system sometimes. Now, I could throw out a blanket answer like, do a non-combative martial art, like, one where you do forms. And some people like that. Some people get a great deal of satisfaction doing Tai Chi forms or karate forms or whatever it isn't aggravating your injury. If you're doing something full contact, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, something where there's a lot of compression on the spine, that's not ideal. Not right now. But instead of recommending a martial art to you, I would recommend to strengthen. Stretch and strengthen. In fact, it may sound like I'm recommending yoga to you, and that wouldn't be the worst idea. I've read a number of studies, 3 different studies performed over the last 20 years, about the value of stretching for the joints and for the back and for the spine. And the act of regular stretching actually increases the development of stem cells in the joints, which can promote healing. I don't know if you've looked up the story of Dallas Page, former professional wrestler Diamond Dallas Page, and he had some serious back injuries because of his wrestling career. Those stunts take a great toll on those wrestlers, as it did on Mr. Page. And so he got into yoga, very deeply into yoga, and that helped sort out a lot of those issues. And he didn't know anything about these studies on stem cells and stretching and all of that. I don't believe, but he just knew, I do this, I feel better. And so he started his own yoga program, more targeted toward men, because a lot of men are really, really reluctant to get into yoga, because they think, oh, that's for girls, that's for women. If I walk into a room full of women doing something difficult like stretching in uncomfortable ways that requires a skill I don't have, and I goof up, they're going to judge me. Okay, I get that. Like I mentioned, I have a degree in Health and Human Performance, Modern Dance Emphasis, which involved ballet classes every day for years. And, to the point where I ended up dancing professionally in 2 different ballet companies and several modern companies, both collegiate and professional. And when you are the only man in a class, especially if it's your first one and you don't know how to do it, and man, you're in there in a room full of girls wearing tights and leotards, and they're good at it, and you're not, and that's intimidating, right? Some people might think, being the only man in a room full of attractive women, woo-hoo, right? But, okay. Then why isn't every yoga class in the world filled with a bunch of dudes? Why isn't every ballet class on planet Earth filled with a bunch of dudes? That's just not the norm, right? So there is a reluctance to move in that way, to stretch, to take a yoga class for men for the most part, because it's just kind of brushed off as men don't do this. This isn't how men move. Men got to do something tough and manly like martial arts and lifting weights, but then you get that injury in your back and you're like, I can't. And so what happens a lot is people stop moving. And when we stop moving, the muscles atrophy and the injury gets worse. So I am not promising you that if you do yoga and stretch out your back every day that you'll be able to do, full contact judo matches again. But it will make it better. It will improve the situation to the point where you can do something that you couldn't do before. And maybe you'll get really into like doing competitive karate forms. A lot of people get a great deal of satisfaction out of that. Or taekwondo forms, or kung fu forms, or something like that, where you can do something cool and athletic, and you're performing in front of an audience and competing for a prize, but without some dude squishing you to death and aggravating that injury. Maybe that's up your alley, maybe it's not. And at the same time, maybe there's a different martial art, like maybe an armed martial art. Ever looked into like historical European martial arts, historical fencing, actual fencing? You know, that there are all kinds of different weapon styles that don't involve twisting, bending, compression on the back, and you can get highly competitive with. So, you know, look into that. Look into sword fighting. Lots of fun. I fenced in college for a short amount of time back at age 18, and man, that was tough. That's a very tough, demanding sport, especially on the legs. So there's like virtually zero compression on the upper body, just gravity, you know, but so much stress on the legs, man. All the lunges, all the lunging to reach out with that sword and moving out, the footwork is very, very demanding. So if you don't have torn up ACLs or whatever, man, give fencing a try. You might enjoy that. Tough sport. So instead of focusing on what we can't do, because anytime we do that in life, whether we're talking about your particular situation, because there's a lot you can't do with a herniated disc in your back, focus on what you can do instead. And you're going to realize there's a whole lot more you can do with your life than what you can't. And there's a whole lot more that you should do than what you can't. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.